Hi guys, here's your quiz for today in chapter 7. Off to the side here, I'm going to kind of remind you and write the trig functions down, and I really encourage you to write these on your paper. So sine is the opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. Okay, so jot those down. So, excuse me, when we go into, let's see, now it's not wanting to erase. Okay, I'm going to have to erase that. So make sure you write it down. But those are our tools for our toolbox that we need to figure these out, okay? So here's number 1. We want to find the value of x in all of these. Again, the most important thing for us to do is to label our sides. And I'm going to even do that for you here. For example, here's the right angle, which he's always pointing to the hypotenuse. That's over here. 39 degrees is our angle of reference, which means this dude over here is your opposite. This would be your adjacent. So given that, okay, to set this up, since you're dealing with opposite and adjacent, okay, opposite and adjacent, we're not dealing with hypotenuse at all. If you look at those 3 tools, you're going to see, yep, you should be wanting to use tangent. So you're going to say tangent of 39 equals what over what? Okay, set that up. It's always opposite over adjacent. And then solve for x. Okay, and again, another little hint I want to give you. I'm just going to write, this is just going to be an example here, and I'm going to erase it. Let's say I had tangent of 50 equals 100 over x. If the x is on the bottom, if your x is on the bottom, which it might be in this one if you set it up right, if it's on the bottom, you simply just want to flip-flop this in the tangent of 50, or if it's sine of 50 or cosine, whatever. Just flip-flop them if the x is on the bottom. So I'd say 100 divided by tangent 50, and that'll give me my side I'm looking for. So that's just an example if the x is on the bottom. If the x is on top, well, then you just multiply by the number on both sides. Moving on to number 2. I don't know why that does that. It drives me nuts, guys. So here we go, number 2. Again, let's label our sides. This now is the hypotenuse. Here's your angle of reference, which makes this the opposite, and this the adjacent. Notice here, we don't know anything about the opposite, just the adjacent and the hypotenuse, which means you would want to use cosine of 52 equals what over what? What over what? Okay, plug those in and solve for x. And question number 3. 17, this is the hypotenuse. Here's your angle of reference, which makes him the opposite, makes him the adjacent. We don't know anything about adjacent, but we do know something about the O and the H, which means we, yes, want to use sine of 61 equals what over what, and solve for x. Again, if the x is on the bottom, just divide. If it's not, multiply the number to the other side. Okay, questions 4, 5, and 6. We need to solve the right triangle. So there's a little bit of work we got to do on all 3 of these. Okay, so starting with number 4, the first thing we want to do is figure out the hypotenuse of this right triangle. So we're going to start off using the old a squared, b squared, c squared. All right, so this would be a, this would be b, and this would be c. Plug everything in. Remember to take the square root at the end. Excuse me, and that'll be c. Now, once we know that, I'm going to erase this. Whoops, erase, not highlight. There we go. Got to erase this because it doesn't want to work properly today. So now we need to figure out the measurement of angle A and angle B. So let's start with angle A. All right. We know we need to label the sides of the triangle. Here's the right angle here, so we know that this is pointing to the hypotenuse, of which you know nothing about. So now the opposite of A would be here. This would be the adjacent. So you need to use the inverse of, I hope you're thinking tangent. So the inverse of tangent, and that's on your calculator, you're going to hit second tangent, and then in the parentheses, fill in a fraction. What over what? And that'll tell you how many degrees angle A is. We're going to do the same thing, oops, erase, for B. We want to figure out angle B. So here's angle B, which means you look over and 13 is now the opposite and 9 is the adjacent. You're still going to use this. Plug in the numbers and figure out your values. Make sure you're writing your answers over on the lines too. Some people don't always enjoy to do that. Number 5, we're going to start off with Pythagorean theorem again. I have to erase all this up here first. Okay, Pythagorean theorem. Now this case, C is already here, my hypotenuse. So there's A squared, we don't know. B squared. So remember to start with that. Okay, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And figure out EF. Once you do that, now we want to figure out D, angle D. So if you look opposite, there's nothing here. This would be the adjacent. This is my hypotenuse. So which of the functions should you use? You're going to use the inverse, and I'm going to let you pick, because you should have it written down. But you have the adjacent, and you have the hypotenuse. So which of those three should you use? But remember to hit on the calculator, hit second function, and then whatever your trig button is, okay? And then when they open up your parenthesis, you got to fill in a fraction. Whatever what. That'll give you for angle D. Now for angle F, just going to change things a little bit. Actually, the hypotenuse doesn't change at all, but we're going to find F, which makes this the opposite. Opposite, not A, Craig. This would be the adjacent. So again, you have opposite and hypotenuse. Which function do you need to use? Okay, last question. Last question. We're going to start off here by figuring out what this side is right here. Okay, here's our reference angle. So let's label the sides of our triangle, shall we? This is always the hypotenuse. This would be the opposite. This would be the adjacent. So which tool should we use to figure this out? So we're going to say, hopefully you're thinking tangent. So tangent of 33 equals the opposite over the adjacent. So whatever what. You're going to solve, and that'll tell you how long this guy here is. Okay? Then we're going to figure out how many degrees G is. Well, this is not hard. If this is 90, this is 33, subtract those from 180, and you'll know how many degrees G is. That goes way back a couple chapters. Now let me erase this again. The last thing you need to figure out is the hypotenuse, the length here. So whatever you got for the first part right here, whatever the length was here, So now this would be our a squared, b squared equals c squared. So whatever number you got here, this is your a. So this squared plus 11 squared equals c squared. And solve for c. And that is it for your test. Again, make sure you put all your answers over there on the right and show all of your work. Have a great rest of the day. God bless.